What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the I Tap That Cigar Show presented by Corona Cigars. Always, I'm your host, Kevin from Cigar Prop, and we are coming to you live from the Drew Estate Experience Asset Studios here on the sunny Gulf Coast of Florida. Normally, my co-host, Kerr Viajante, would be joining us, but he is under the weather tonight, so hopefully he's watching. And he can type in his questions, which we will ask our guest. And as always, joining me in the background, producer Jessica.
Hello.
Hello. That's she wasn't gonna put makeup on tonight just for Nick. If it had been like Steve, no, probably not Steve.
I was not putting makeup on.
You'd put makeup on for Matt Booth. Matt, you'd put makeup on.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably you will. You see the way you said that? She's twirling her hair as she says that, and you know what happens when girls twirl their hair.
First off, I feel so grimy after painting for 2 days.
Yes.
Trying to scrub my hair, my body, my face, and it felt like it just needed nothing touching it.
Yeah.
We've so much paint.
If anybody been following us on the social medias, like I said, we got the new lounge and our new workshop in primer and paint. Thank you, Sherwin Williams, for a great company employees that you have and helping me get the right primer and paint. Let's get right into it. I need a cigar. So let's get right into the Cigar Medics Humidimeter Cut and Light. Remember, with the Cigar Medics Humidimeter, where's my humidimeter at? Oh, there it is. Remember, with the Cigar Medics Humidimeter, you'll always know when to hold them and know when to smoke them. And mine is at 62%. Absolutely perfect.
So we're both smoking the Charter Oak, and the reason why is the only other cigar that I have is one that would probably kill me and Kevin trapped in this little space.
Oh, you have like the big upsetter. You have like a 6x60 upsetter.
I have a couple different sizes, but I do enjoy that cigar. But that is definitely an outdoor cigar.
I agree. and if you didn't hear Jessica, we were both smoking the Charter Oak Habano. Now, I'm not saying this because of the guests that we're having on the show. You can actually go back. I get asked this the most on TikTok. So you can go back to my TikTok channel, look at any of my videos, and almost all the time you're going to see a question that gets asked me, what's a cigar that you would smoke as a beginner? Or like what would you recommend? 100% of the time. And that's if it's asked on any platform. I always say, go to your local brick and mortar, buy all 3 Charter Oak cigars.
Can I say something?
What?
If you Google what's a good beginner cigar, Charter Oak pops up in the list. As
it should. It's a cigar. I tell everybody, go to your brick and mortar, buy the Connecticut Shade, the broadleaf, and the Habano, smoke all of them, and then go back to your brick and mortar and have a discussion with the tobacconist, because depending on what you like or don't dislike between those 3 cigars, he is going to be able to get you into any cigar on the market, but hopefully he steers you into the foundation line. But like I said, the Charter Oak line, 100% of the time, that is always the cigar I tell everybody to smoke if they're and beginner or not. I'm smoking one tonight. I'm not a beginner.
No, but I would just thought that was pretty cool that when you Google that pops up.
So that must be me. It must be all my questions. I'm doing that. It makes me feel better for getting a free hat from her, taking a free hat. I don't even think I asked for this hat. I think I just took it. So all right, all right. So we got a little housekeeping to get through before we bring on our guest. We talked about it last week, and we'll remind everybody again, Boston Jimmy and his son is going to be climbing Mount Fuji this July to raise money for Autism Speaks. In the show description or the podcast description, if you're listening to this, there is a link to the Autism Speaks fundraiser page where you can donate. The only thing I ask is that you can put in your name, but they'll have a name recognition box. Type in Cigar Prop. Whoever gets the most donations, if we get the most donations, Boston Jimmy has agreed to take one of our lighter bleed tools to the top of Mount Fuji with him. And then when he gets back, I'm going to auction it off for charity. So definitely check out that link. Also, Matt and Nicole from Smokin Tobacco are hosting their third annual raffle for the Cigar Family Charitable Foundation. They've raised over $58,000 to date. There are tons of raffle prizes, so make sure you click that link in this video description or podcast description below. Donate today and get in on those great raffles. Jessica, anything else that we're
as far as news?
Yeah, I forget. I thought there was something else. Let's see. Tune in. We got It's Just Manny. Tune in tomorrow night, 9 p.m.
There's the news. That's
okay.
The
yes, we'll don't worry, Manny. We'll ask. We're gonna. Okay, so that's gonna be our first question for Nick. So since Manny's on,
all right.
Manny, you probably have a good chance at this one. Like, there hasn't been a manufacturer yet that has watched this TV show. I have a feeling, Nick, this might be up his might be up his alley. We got Michael Scott Henry. Good evening. Just happy to see Nick on the show. I almost always go to Foundation whenever I want quality enjoyment. Not sure what I'm in the mood to smoke. Specifically, also great to me. Oh, hey, Marshall, at the Great Smoke.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. So, all right. I think let's.
All right. Enough of hearing Kevin speak.
That's it. With that, Kerr usually interrupts my speaking.
Yeah.
So, not interrupts. He,
keeps you.
Yeah, he keeps me from talking too much. So, all right. Before we bring on our guest tonight, we want to take a moment to thank all of our show partners for making this show happen each and every week, as they have done for the last few years. We really can't do this without them. So thank you to JC Newman Cigars, Cigar Medics, and Mandola Cigars. We are the muscle. Jake Wyatt Cigars, Illusione Cigars, deep in flavor, deep in your mind. K by Karen Berger Cigars, Corona Cigar, and of course, Drew Estate and Experience Acid. All right, so waiting patiently in the Experience Acid green room is Knight Commander of the Order of the Star of Ethiopia, Nick Melillo, a.k.a. Chief of the Broadleaf, a.k.a. the founder of Foundation Cigars. Nick.
Kevin, great to be here, man. I think that was the first time that someone officially used the Knight Commander title. That was great.
It was, that's more important than just a lowly cigar maker.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, if you have the chance to introduce yourself as two things, which one sounds better?
What do they call those? Post nominals. I can actually officially use Knight Commander as when I'm signing documents or stuff like that. It's crazy.
How cool. Do you have a wax seal and everything, or did you get that yet?
Let me tell you, no wax seal, but I'm a big fan of the wax seal. So you might be seeing a little something come out this summer. You might see a little something special come out. I'm actually hoping to do something special, and also I'm working with a new charity for Ethiopian scholarships and education, and so I might be coming out with something at the show to kind of go, in that direction.
Right. You heard it here, folks. It's what that's why Charlie Minato listens to our show, and because it's always
Charlie's all over everything.
Charlie just dropping bombs for Charlie.
He lives and breathes it.
Do you watch the show Oak Island? Do you know of this show?
I've seen it a few times, and I haven't kept up with it, but there was a period there, I think when it first came out, that I was watching it, but I haven't seen it in a while.
Okay, so the things that happened in the first show, that's still happening 10 years later. Like they have So it's just, we got Manny here that always asks our guests that each week. They haven't found anything, and the hole's just deeper.
What are they trying to find again? They're trying to find some lost treasure?
They're trying to find the possibly the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh man, they're way off.
They're way off. Was that Jessica?
I was going to say that's not true. Manny would dispute that they have found some stuff. They have found some buttons.
Yeah,
but there is some other historical stuff that has happened on that island.
Yeah,
it kind of goes into some of that, but they still really haven't found.
This is in Nova. No, where?
I think it's just off of Nova Scotia. So it's just,
I've always wanted to go to Nova Scotia.
See,
I really like
golden. But we got friends that live in Nova Scotia. My friend Megan and her husband. It looks beautiful, but like it snows, man, bro. The snow. It's 24/7 year round.
It's interesting. I forgot why they feel that the Ark of the Covenant is in Oak Island. They thought that the Knights Templar brought it there or something.
They thought possibly the Knights Templar, because there are some old stories about some people on the mainland seeing the white robes, the cross. So and then also there's a chance it could be Blackbeard has hidden some of his treasure up there. Yeah. So
as you know, I very much am a scholar, an amateur scholar of Ethiopian history, and their claim to possess the Ark of the Covenant is a rather interesting one, because I don't think people realize that no other place on the planet does a country have an affinity in culture for the Ark of the Covenant. So every church in Ethiopia has a replica of the tablets of the Ark of the Covenant. Every church. So every single church has a replica, not of the full golden angeled ark, that one, but they have a replica of the tablets that are usually covered. Only the high priests are able to see them, and they keep them within the Holy of Holies of the church. But the church doesn't exist unless those tablets are in the church. So it's sort of like the energy source. So if those tablets are removed, the church goes with it. And I don't know of a culture on the planet that, has an affinity for the Ark of the Covenant like that. So, where did that come? The Ethiopians claim it comes from Menelik bringing the Ark of the
son of the Queen of Sheba and
Solomon.
And lately I've been watching some things, them trying to disprove that King Solomon had ever even existed. Like, there's no historical evidence that he existed. I'm like, other than the thousands of writings, so, and then King Solomon was really an Egyptian ruler, could have been Ramses, whoever.
Interesting. Yeah. But it's very tough, that time period, because there's still not a lot of, there's not a lot of evidence. And the Ark of the Covenant, there's not a lot of, evidence from the biblical writings, because it's only mentioned, a certain number of times, and then it disappears, and it's clouded in mystery.
It's clouded, but there is one mystery that I found out the other. So I'm sitting in my office Saturday night. I bust out of my office door, because like right on the other side of this door that I'm about touching is my bedroom. Jessica is in bed watching TikTok or whatever, and I'm like freaking out. I'm so excited because I had learned something that I never knew before, and it was actually an Amazon suggestion. It was a short a little book called History of Ethiopia, a captivating guide to Ethiopian history.
Oh wow!
It's only 100 pages. This company makes a ton of books, and so I bust in like the Kool-Aid man, and I said, Jessica, Haile Selassie, the 225th and last emperor of Ethiopia, the King of Kings. Do you know what his name was before it was changed to Haile Selassie? And she goes, no. And I go, it was Ras Tafari.
And I literally was like, shut up. And then I started looking at.
So now it's at night. We're both relaxed, getting ready to go to bed. We're freaking out, looking up, and like, I did not know.
Yeah.
His name was Ras Tafari.
But the thing I found most interesting about all of that is once you become a Rastafarian, you actually have to be accepted into the faith, kind of. Like, so tradition says.
So there's different mansions of what they call them, mansions of Rastafari. So there's 12 tribes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there's a mansion called Boba Shanti. And I can't believe the last one is slipping me. So, yeah, Haile Selassie was crowned king in 1930 and given the name Haile Selassie, which means power of the Holy Trinity. But his birth name was Tafari Makenen, which his father's name was Makenen, and the term Ras is actually like Duke or Lord in Ethiopia. There's this whole other stratification of royal society in Ethiopia that goes back again to the time of Solomon and Sheba. So Ras is a term meaning prince. There's different interpretations of it. So he was named Ras, I think, at the age of I want to say around 13, if I'm not mistaken, and he was He was the head of an area called Harar. So at the early age of 13, he was, governing a whole region of Ethiopia, and he was brought up under the king at the time, whose name was Menelik, who traces back to Menelik the First from Solomon and Sheba's son. So he was brought up. Menelik's cousin was Haile Selassie's father. So he was brought up in the royal court. So people don't realize.
I never realized that. So how does and like I said, I haven't had a chance to get like the I want to get the same book on Rastafari, the religion, their beliefs, and dive a little bit deeper into that. So, but in the meantime, maybe you can fill me in. How does Ethiopian culture and basically the worship of Haile Selassie, Rastafari, make its way across the globe to Jamaica?
So you have the crowning of Rastafari November 2nd, 1930, and there was a Jamaican gentleman by the name of Leonard Howell, who is considered the first Rastafarian in about 1931. Who, you got to understand, in Jamaica at that time, being ruled by England, a long history, of course, of colonialism and slavery. No one had ever heard of a black king before. I mean, it was pretty much unheard of. So this news spread in 1930, early 30s, and the news spread to Jamaica, and Leonard Howell sees the news and starts learning that the lineage of the Solomonic dynasty runs through Ethiopia. And they were very familiar with the Bible and Revelation. In Revelation, there's a passage, Revelation 5:5, that before the opening of the seven seals in the apocalypse, there was no one worthy to open the book except for the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. And this was the Ethiopian title. Haile Selassie took on this title, Haile Selassie, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. So he immediately took to Haile Selassie and denounced the Queen of England as being the true queen of Jamaica, and proclaimed Haile Selassie as his true king. And this caused many problems. People didn't realize, and that's in the 30s. And it really wasn't until the 60s and 70s that people really started to learn about Rastafarians, but they had existed. There was a community up in the mountains called Pinnacle, where Leonard Howell and many followers, were living, and the government came in, beat everybody up, kind of dispersed, everybody, and was really threatened by this kind of movement. But people saw Haile Selassie as the second coming of Jesus. Not everybody has the same interpretations. There's a lot of different interpretations, but one of them that, he was the one to come and open the book and the seven seals, and he became a Messiah figure to many people in Jamaica.
Yeah, they're still fighting. I know. I think the Prince William just visited last year or 2 years ago, and then in Jamaica they had said, hey, we're done. We're done with you. And I guess they're still in there. They're still they haven't kicked them out yet. I don't know what's.
Oh, the British. No, the British. Jamaica became independent. I want to say I always mix up the date. I'm sorry if I mix up the date. 1964, 63-ish. But you still have a relationship. I was there in October on a delegation with Haile Selassie's grandson. I had the honor of being part of a delegation to Jamaica in October, which was an amazing dream come true. And part of our visit was to Parliament, and then the governor's house, the king's house, I'm sorry, is directly appointed by, the queen at that time, now the king. So there's still a very intimate relationship, even though Jamaica is independent, between Britain and Jamaica. The interesting thing, this gets kind of complex, is that Haile Selassie and the queen had a very close relationship.
Oh, did they?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, very much so. The queen visited Ethiopia many times. When the Italians invaded Ethiopia before World War II, the Italians invaded in 1936. Haile Selassie went first to Jerusalem, then to Switzerland to address the League of Nations. And then he went into exile in England, in Bath, England. And then 5 years later, the British actually helped the Ethiopians retake Addis Ababa, the capital, and Ethiopia. So, yeah, there's this interesting. Many Rastafarians are not big fans of the Queen in England, but then you have many that are and understand the relationship.
So what is their role? I know they're an independent nation. What is the monarchy's role in Jamaica now? Because they, like I said, they were, they still,
it's part of the. I believe it's still part of the English Commonwealth territories.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're Commonwealth still. So even though they're independent, I really don't understand. I should know more about it, but the Commonwealth, to my understanding, there's still, some sort of basic governance and relationship. I mean, they're not separated completely. I was kind of shocked to see it myself on my trip in October. I didn't realize how much England is still much a part of the governing of Jamaica.
Yeah, it's I'm of Irish descent, so I'm not a fan of the English either. Just making their waves and putting their tentacles in everything. At their height, man, like I said, they owned half the planet, everywhere, and it's mind-boggling that such a small nation like England can have like this rule over I can understand Ireland is next door. Jamaica is across the ocean. It's like, how did they keep that, so long? And, and among
the Spanish had it, I think, before the English, right? I mean, you had this battle over the Caribbean and Spain, Portuguese. I believe Jamaica, if you see the Jamaican flag, to some of my research is actually the crest of Columbus's family and what he flew under. Yeah. So a lot of these things, they're still very much interconnected. That's what is so fascinating to me about history. And I've always been into history because it just sort of connects the dots a lot of times and explains why a lot of things are the way they are. And when I was young,
and plus you have knowledge on practical history, not like Terrence Riley of Aganorsa, who studied like ancient Rome and like Greek or whatever. And it's like, what are you gonna do with that, Terrence? You know, now you're in the cigar business. So yeah.
That history is interesting also because it really does stem way back to that time. I mean, you look at the architecture, law and stuff like that, but it's not my strong point going back that far.
No, not at all. Now, are you Rastafarian, or are you practicing, or are you?
That's a great question. I never really talked about that before. I closely relate with Rastafari because if you talk to Rastafarians, it's not a religion per se, but a way of life. It's called livity. So it's a way you live your life, and I definitely connect to it. And I closely relate to, I think, Christian and Rastafarian, if I had to put a name on it. But I was never really into the namings of religion in per se, because it didn't make sense to me at a very young age why all these people are talking about God and everybody's fighting against each other. Right. And one of the teachings of Haile Selassie was about the unification of the churches, but also of religion, and respecting other people's, religious beliefs and spirituality, which I connected to. So I would closely relate to the Rastafarian faith. Yes.
All right. So did obviously your love of the Jamaican culture, like I said, it's evident in the cigars, the upsetters. But did your love of Jamaican culture bring you to Ethiopia, or did your fascination with Ethiopia bring you to the Jamaican cultures? Where did that start?
Yeah, so it's interesting because it really closely connects to my life in cigars. So it was all, my life in cigars was happening simultaneously with my love for Jamaica, Rastafari, and Ethiopia. So 95, 96, I started smoking a lot of cigars that were made in Jamaica. And one thing people don't realize, being from Connecticut, is Connecticut actually has the third largest population of Jamaicans in the United States. So it's Miami, New York, and Connecticut, which is bizarre, right?
I know, in Connecticut.
Okay. And you want to know why that is? That is directly related to a 1944 work program between the state of Connecticut and Jamaica. So World War II is happening. There is a huge demand for cigars for the soldiers. I have letters from my grandfather who fought in the Battle of the Bulge requesting his Connecticut cigars. There was no one to work the fields. Okay. So Connecticut went to Jamaica, who was also producing amazing cigar, Royal Jamaica, which Churchill was an avid smoker of. So that's where that relationship happens. My new office, which we're going to be announcing probably over the next couple of months, is actually an old Jamaican barracks on a 100-acre farm in the valley, where Jamaicans would actually live, and they come up for the summer, the growing season between April and September, October, and then return to Jamaica for the growing season there. So I'm learning about this as I'm smoking cigars. And Connecticut, when you're young, you're like, oh man, I got to get out of here. Connecticut sucks. But one of the coolest things about Connecticut at the time was, learning about our history of cigar culture. So, 96, I graduated high school. I'm looking for a job. I'm smoking, at this time, Macanudo Hyde Park was being made in the Cifuentes factory in Kingston, Jamaica. It was using Connecticut shade wrapper from the valley, and it was no cellophane. It was an amazing cigar. Temple Hall, amazing. Royal Jamaica. So simultaneously, some of my good friends in school started listening to ska and rocksteady music, which is distinctly, Jamaican music. So I started getting, into the music that summer. As I'm working, I start working the cigar store in August, and then I was introduced to Bob Marley, and it was over after that. I mean, I started listening to Bob, but where people were just listening to Bob, I didn't smoke, herb at that time.
Yeah.
And everybody had a poster of Bob Marley, and I'm listening to, Jamming in the Name of the Lord, where all these songs, what is this man saying? And I deep dove into, Bob's music, and, Bob's whole mission was to spread the word of Ethiopia and Haile Selassie. I mean, he dedicated his life to it and almost died for it. So that's kind of where it started, and it never stopped from that point,
And you were lucky enough. You were at Bob's house. Wasn't it on the anniversary of his birthday? I saw. I remember a long time ago. What was that? Been a couple of years now.
So that was February 6th, 2015. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Bob's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was 2015. I was here in Nicaragua working on El Huehuense, which was going to launch at the show that July, and stressing out, and happened to go on, online and remembered that it was Bob's 70th birthday. This was like 5 days before. I booked a last second ticket to Kingston, had no idea what was going on. I just showed up at Bob's house February 6th. And of course they had stages set up. Drumming going on for the morning time. So I had been there before. 56 Hope Road is the name of Bob's house.
Oh, wow.
Which is now a museum and one of the hot spots in Kingston to visit. People get a little nervous about Kingston, but Bob's house is a place of refuge.
It's definitely a place of. We got Christopher Walmer. First song I learned on the ukulele, Redemption Song intro.
Oh, nice.
And,
that's a good one.
That's it. You play. Well, what do you play? The banjo, don't you?
No. I was fooling around. I play a little guitar, but nothing too crazy. I mean, I just play around with it. It's my dream to really actually learn piano and to learn music more, but I fool around with the guitar. I have a guitar here in the studio.
Okay, I've never seen you. Don't you have like a foundation cigar?
That was some the humidor shop in Maryland, who I've known forever. It was a gift. This beautiful banjo with foundation logo.
Yeah,
the base of the banjo, and I faked that whole thing.
Yeah.
They played that song in the background, and I faked the whole thing.
Is that what it was? I'm like, for someone to not know, I'm like, you did pretty good. I actually did a video years ago, Jessica and I have a set of like cheap bagpipes, like really cheap bagpipes. And we were doing a video for, I forget what garbage cigar it was. It was, and it was like an Irish themed cigar, a flavored cigar, whatever. And I had my kilt on, and I came in playing in the back, and then Jessica shuts the phone off that was playing it. So yeah, same thing. But yeah,
you had a Milli Vanilli moment.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I love the meme that's going around, Milli Vanilli, watching everybody lip sync on TikTok and becoming millionaires, and they're just like, what the fuck is this?
These poor guys, man.
That's it. So
destroyed.
They did. We got Ronnie Haysha joining us tonight. Do you know Ronnie from Secreto Cigar in Ferndale, Michigan?
Yeah. I know of him. I don't know if I met Ronnie before in person. Have I, Ronnie?
You would know. Nobody forgets Ronnie. That's like saying, hey, I can't remember. Have I ever met Steve Saka? No. If you ask yourself that question, no, you have not met Saka. You have not met Ronnie at all. If you haven't.
How's my light situation doing? Should I
No, I mean you're I mean, yeah, you're lit up just fine.
All right, good.
So all right. I introduced you as Knight Commander of the Order of the Star of Ethiopia. I've never heard the story about. I know you've talked a little bit about it online, like on your own personal Facebook page, but how did that come? Like, what does that title mean, and how did you get that? Like, what does it take?
I'm still in shock about the whole thing, to be honest. But it was before COVID hit. It was February. It was actually the leap day, 29th. I had gotten an email that month inviting me to a dinner in Washington, D.C. With the Ethiopian Crown Council. And I don't know, at the time, I didn't know how I got it or, how I just received this invitation and, of course, agreed to go to the dinner. And then they had asked me if I would provide Menelik cigars for the dinner. Of course, I happily agreed.
Okay, so you're already making the Menelik at the time. Okay.
Correct. So then I learned, going to the dinner, I met the woman who had actually sent me the invitation, and she said, well, we had seen your box of Meneliks in TG Cigar Shop in Washington, D.C. TG's is a great shop in DC, not too far from the White House, and it's a bar. And I had remembered talking to the owner about 4 years prior to that, 3 or 4 years prior. And a friend of mine from Connecticut was in the shop and said, I think the owner is from Ethiopia. At which point I said, pass the phone. Let me talk to her. We talked for about a half an hour. And that was it. That was I hadn't talked to her since, and we had never met in person. But part of the Crown Council happened to be in the shop, and the owner said, you have to contact Nicholas. He loves Ethiopia and the history. So that's how I had gotten the invitation. And I showed up to the dinner, and I was texting TG as I'm at the dinner, not knowing she was sitting right across from me. So we instantly made a ruckus in the middle of this black tie dinner, and that's how the invitation started. And I met some really amazing people at the dinner. One of them is a professor of antiquities at Fairfield University. One of the other gentlemen was actually his father was the goldsmith to Emperor Haile Selassie. And it was just mind blowing. And I became friends with a number of people I met that evening. And then COVID hit, and we ended up doing a lot of Zoom calls. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I was being vetted. Like, okay. Why is this, who is this guy, and why does he have such a love for Ethiopia? And some of the people I'd become friends with were really close to Prince Ermias Selah Selassie, who is Haile Selassie's grandson. And I think they just went back to him and said, no, I think this guy just really loves Ethiopia. And, he genuinely loves Ethiopia. And, I started becoming closer to some of the members, and I ended up going to a couple other events. And then last year I received the Order of Order of the Star of Honor of Ethiopia in the rank of Knight Commander for my promotion and support of the Crown.
How cool! So what does that get you in Ethiopia when you visit Ethiopia? Do you have like I don't want to say like a uniform, or I don't want to say a sash with a giant key to the city, but what is that? Do you get something?
So I was knighted at the dinner last year, formally knighted in a ceremony, and I was given the Order of Knight Commander, which goes back to the late 1800s, and the time of Menelik. I believe it was Menelik who formed the order. I don't know if you saw. Did you see the Knight Commander piece? I don't know if I can bring this up for you. There, let's see. This is what I was honored with here. This is
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the order and the Knight Commander, and there's also a miniature. And I always knew I would get a gold star. I got one in kindergarten, and so yeah, I received these amazing medal. Yeah, which goes back to the late 1800s.
I mean, how cool! But I can understand them vetting. I mean, we've got this white guy from Connecticut, that is, for some reason, enthralled in our culture. Let's dig a little bit. Let's just dig a little deeper. Because like I said, I reading in this book, Ethiopia, not a lot of fans back in the day. I love the story how they crushed an entire Egyptian. I mean, decimated. And the entire country of Egypt, the entire army. I loved that story.
That was a while ago, right?
Yeah, that was a while ago. That was a while ago, but it was still a cool story. But yeah, so people have been trying to infiltrate.
When I was 18, all I knew of Ethiopia was starvation. You understand? We grew up in the time of Live Aid. So Live Aid,
that's it.
In 1984, 86, the communists took over in 1974. They called themselves the Derg.
Yep.
So Haile Selassie was responsible. He was known as the Emperor of Education. He built a ton of universities and was very adamant about Ethiopians studying abroad, learning from other cultures. So 1974, the Russians and the Cubans penetrated the universities, and it started this period of history known as the Red Terror in Ethiopia, because they systematically murdered much of the royal family and anyone that was speaking out against them. And then that led into the early 1980s, where there was massive famines in the country. And then Live Aid. And Live Aid, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very controversial concert that was global. Anybody that was around this time, I was, maybe 6 years old. But at the same time, it was trying to do so much good to raise money for the famines. It branded the country as starvation. And that's literally all I knew until, I was 18. And then I had a few different experiences that were happening. I was reading the Bible in university. The English professor had us reading Genesis as literature, not as a religious text.
Yeah.
And it very clearly in Genesis 2:13 describes the Garden of Eden as having 4 rivers: Tigris, Euphrates, which we know is Mesopotamia, Iraq, and the 2 other rivers were the Gihon and the Fihon, which the Bible says flew through the land of Ethiopia, or some Bibles say Cush. Ethiopia is Greek. Cush is Hebrew. They both mean the same thing: those who have been darkened by the sun. So that's happening. And then I had a customer that came in in the cigar shop with a National Geographic that talks about all of the first bones of Homo sapiens being found in Ethiopia.
Yeah, not only that, Lucy, the Australopithecus,
all of them has been in the Rift Valley. So I'm like, what? How is a religious text? There's a biblical text, and the scientists are like, that's weird. Why is that? And I just started really connecting the dots, and then learning pre-1974, you have 3,000 years of kings and queens. That is one of the oldest lineages of kings and queens in the world. And that just blew my mind, but not only that, is that we now, years later, they had the Genome Project, which everybody's getting their DNA done.
Yeah.
But they traced mitochondrial DNA. So everybody's mother's DNA, doesn't matter what color you are, what race you come from, anywhere on the planet, they traced it back to one female in Ethiopia. So we have fossil evidence, we have DNA evidence, we have religious, so we have one common origin of humanity, but this is pretty much unknown. We do not, I mean, it's not taught in school. It's not, really talked about at all.
It's not, because because we're about the same age. Like I said, I grew up. That's all I knew about Ethiopia famine. You had the Ethiopian
you had
jokes.
All those commercials.
You had all the commercials. And
literally it would like break your heart.
It is, and then Live Aid, which none of that money ever went to Ethiopia. All that did was that went straight to the government.
The communists took all the money, which is crazy that they, all England, United States, all these governments supported that this happened, because the majority of it did not get back to the people.
Oh, exactly. And then for me, after that, Ethiopian culture really, we didn't learn about anything in Ethiopia in school. I mean, that was something that was never taught. And honestly, until I found Foundation Cigars, like years ago, which never, brought Ethiopian culture back into my forefront. I remember, I think it was 2020 or 2021, the Havana Seed Connecticut 142. That was my number one cigar of the year. I remember buying that box and remember seeing like wanting to know more about the person that was on the cover of that box, and then really diving deep into the culture and the heritage. And I'm like, this is the cradle of civilization.
Exactly.
You can call it, I say Iraq, but no, it really is Ethiopia. And then since then, for the last couple of years, I've just been on a mission just to find out as much information as I can. Same.
It just never stopped, because it really changed my perspective on everything. So I suddenly, at that age, I was 18 at the time, I started seeing things not as separated and everything being very interconnected. If that makes sense. And then it opened up this door to learn, I ended up learning more out of university than I did in university, because I was on this kind of road of discovery. And I just found it mind blowing that I could have a perception of a place and it be so actually rich in so much history and culture, and be part of the beginning of human history.
That's it. We got Ronnie from Secreto. That's an opinion where civilization started. So Ronnie Haisha. So he's the Ronnie. What I forget. He's not Sumerian. He's but yeah, his people are the first people. So so Ronnie takes
Mesopotamia is a very important place, but to my feeling is that Mesopotamia, that it's known 5,000 years ago, Mesopotamia, Sumer, civilization begins on these amazing cuneiforms.
Babylonian. So So.
I have a feeling, although I do not have, firm, credible evidence, that civilization goes back much farther than we originally anticipated. And if you see this area of the world between Tigris, Euphrates, the Gihan, Fihan, Ethiopia, the Blue Nile starts there. So that's one of the tributaries of the Nile River. And then you have the Red Sea. That Red Sea at the last ice age, this was one landmass. There wasn't that huge, that sea didn't fill in until after the ice caps melted. So this was a really interconnected region. But Ronnie is correct. I mean, the time of Abraham, yes.
Yeah. And then we don't know how much further back they go. There's proof now that, which been reading a lot on, like, the Sphinx, is 15,000 years older than what they thought it was. So where did civilization actually begin? And, it's just been
that opens up the Sphinx. many geologists have claimed that the Sphinx is actually water erosion due on the Sphinx and not wind and sand. And that brings the date back to the Sphinx to be much older. There's places in Turkey now. There's a place that they discovered that they're dating to 12,000 BC. That is kind of changing, all the perception.
It is. I think in the next
we don't know
10
much,
years,
man. Yeah,
we don't know anything. I mean, we have such our knowledge of our ancestry and our civilization is so tiny. It's crazy.
They didn't know the Earth was 4 billion years old until like 1952. I mean, and now the stuff you see all the stuff in the Amazon now.
Yeah, it's
discovered all of these. I mean, it's insane, but we do not know the whole story. I mean,
it's crazy. I mean, when you think about like Albert Einstein, who is, I mean, he's from our, not our generation, but essentially our generation. He didn't know there were dinosaurs. So we just discovered, and then I read an interesting fact last week that talking about like how old dinosaurs were. There were dinosaur when dinosaurs were still alive. So at the end of dinosaurs,
250 million years ago,
there were dinosaur fossils that were hundreds of millions of years old, while dinosaurs still roam the planet.
Right.
And then like I said, we didn't find out about dinosaurs until like the 60s or something, whatever it was. It's like, what?
Big reptiles.
Big reptiles.
I think that's what dinosaur means. Gigantic reptile or something.
Gigantic or angry lizard. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's what's important is like, nothing is written in stone when it comes to this. I'm, always open to learning. And, I think it's unfortunately people get really attached, and especially in academia, and they become, really closed down to discovery and learning new things. I don't know if you saw recently in the Great Pyramid, they actually discovered a new chamber within the pyramid, which is interesting. But people have narratives, and they're trying to come across with a certain narrative a lot of the time. But
that's it. I mean, they're trying to prove that the Great Pyramid wasn't Khufu's. It was that was just that one dude that scribbled it on the wall to make some sense of whose pyramid it was. Or Khufu or Ramses, one of the two. But yeah, I mean that could be older than.
The timeline is kind of weird. The Homo sapien timeline is about 250,000 years that we emerged from the Rift Valley, right?
Yeah.
From this area. So you basically have this linear accepted line of civilization that we were basically hunter-gatherers until Sumer and Mesopotamia. So until 5000 BC. So it went 250,000 years, and it wasn't until 5,000, BC that civilization emerged.
Well, that's it. And we were just watching something the other night on the History Channel, and God, I can't remember the name of the civilization. I want to say it's in South America, but it was, they have dated it back to 12 to 15,000 years ago when we were still hunter-gatherers. I mean, we had nothing. We had sticks. That's all we had. And they built like these what they think were shrines with these stones that are, tens of tons. And like how we had sticks. I mean, we can prove this. We had no tools at this time, period. It wasn't a thing. How did they construct these?
Can't explain it. They can't explain it. I mean,
aliens. It's always comes back.
I mean, that's that. Then you get into Sumer, which I'm curious if Ronnie knows the story of the Anunnaki, but according to the Sumerian tablets, is that they were very much aware of the solar system and planets, and that there was another planet, which NASA is now confirming, which is crazy. There's always been the conspiracy of Planet X, they call it Nibiru, of another planet. And this has always been rejected as a crazy conspiracy theory. But they now have the mathematical data that they actually, NASA is converting. You look at, I was in this wormhole about 2 weeks ago.
I was a couple of months ago when they were talking about, how they put the planets into this computer system. And it's like, without this planet, it couldn't, things couldn't have formed.
Yeah. So, it was on 60 Minutes or something like that.
So they put it out there and then everything fell in line. Like it's exactly where, there's one group of planetary scientists or whatever that due to math, they figured out on math on a whiteboard. Okay, if this planet is there, like in this region of space, we're expected to see this, and this.
That's exactly it.
And they spent like whatever, a couple of years, and they found it. Exactly what they I mean, it was just the math found this place.
It fits into the mathematical model. I mean, it's the only explanation for the mathematics is that there's another planet.
Yeah,
but the Sumerians, the original stargazers. I mean, Ronnie, that's where Ronnie, I think, claimed that Turkey was a part of this area also, but this area in Turkey now that they've dated 12,500 years, that was purposely buried. I can't believe I forgot the name of it. Do you mind if I pull this up?
Yeah,
for a second? I gotta get the.
I think we're talking about the same place. I thought it was South America.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yes. Göbekli Tepe. Yes, that's what I was thinking of.
They have now claimed that this was purposely buried, but that the objects and structures are mathematically aligned with the stars, right? And this is what it kind of comes down to is, we're inside all the time. We're on TVs. We're not connected to the movement of the heavens. And these ancient cultures, of course, would have to be connected in a very intimate way with the heavens in order to live and survive. I mean, it's just how it went down. So, I mean, this site 12,500 years ago, changes pretty much all the history books. It brings it back much farther.
It does. And speaking of cool sites, you got to visit on your last one of your last trips to Ethiopia, St. George's Cathedral. And you got to see all the cool stuff that was in there. How cool was that? And for people that don't know, this St. George's Cathedral, that's where Haile Selassie was crowned.
And I happened to be there on November 2nd, which was the anniversary of his coronation.
Oh, was that planned, or you just happened to be?
No. I mean, when November 2nd came, I said I have to be here while I was there. But the Ethiopia trip happened last minute. That was my first trip to Ethiopia.
Oh, that was your first? Okay.
First trip. And I always, of course, dreamed of traveling to Ethiopia. And I never thought in my wildest imagination that it would manifest traveling there with Haile Selassie's grandson and a delegation. I was honored to be part of the Ethiopian delegation as the only foreigner a part of the delegation. People don't realize is Haile Selassie always had advisors from the United States. So when he spoke before the League of Nations in 1936, he was very much about perspective and learning again from others. So it was cool that I was able to be a part of it, but it evolved out of our delegation to Jamaica. I received a call in October asking if I would be part of the delegation because the Minister of Culture of Jamaica invited Prince Ermias to Jamaica for the 60th anniversary of the independence from Britain. So we had an amazing schedule all week. We we were visiting, all parts of Rastafarian communities, parliament. It was amazing. And about 2 days before the trip ended, Prince Ermias had gotten a call from Ethiopia that his grandfather was going to be recognized by the Organization of African Unity, which his grandfather helped form in 1963. And this was the first time he was going to be recognized since 1974.
Oh,
so
wow.
Things have been a little delicate since 1974. And it was the first time that Haile Selassie was going to be recognized. And this was on a Friday. And I was presented with, going on the trip. And I immediately said yes, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, the one catch is we got to leave Wednesday. So this was on Friday. We left Jamaica on Saturday, got home Sunday, sent my visa on Monday to get my passport done, and we were off on Wednesday. So it all happened really fast, and it was amazing.
Yeah, so, you're talking about since the 70s, Ethiopia has been a little up and down. The last couple of years have been like the last 2 years. It's been kind of a whirlwind. A lot of political strife. It's
Ethiopia's had a lot. Ethiopia, unfortunately, had been in a kind of a civil war. So communists take over in 1974. They fall out of power in 1990, 1991. And then that political group, they were known as the TPLF, which was the Tigrayan Liberation Party. The Tigrayans is a ethnic group within Ethiopia that's 6% of the population that live in the north of Ethiopia. They ruled from 1990 into about 2018 when a new prime minister came in. He actually won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But then in 2020, when COVID hit, there was supposed to be elections. The elections were delayed.
I remember that. Yeah.
Then it got unfortunately, it got really bad. When we were there in October, they were actually in peace talks and finally made peace.
Oh, okay.
South Africa while we were there, which was amazing. But there's been some tensions recently. It's interesting because us as the United States have finally been taking more of an interest. Haile Selassie was very close to John F. Kennedy. He was actually one of the 4 heads of state that was at the head of his casket, chosen by Jackie Onassis. He was actually in Washington, D.C. the month before JFK was assassinated. You see the picture. My grandparents knew of Haile Selassie. If you see pictures from the United States of Haile Selassie, there was huge parades in the street. New York City, people lining the streets, Washington, D.C., because Haile Selassie was the first one to stand up against the fascists, and Mussolini, and which is interesting because my family's Italian, but my grandfathers all fought, of course, for the United States against the fascists. So I don't know. I was going off on a tangent.
But it's weird. Yeah. So within just a generation, his name in the culture was scrubbed from our history books,
except for the Rastafarians.
Yeah, except for
the spirit. If it wasn't for the Rastafarians, it would be even less known than it is now. And even then, I think a lot of people have a kind of not so clear picture because the culture of kind of smoking weed and all that has kind of eclipsed a lot of times the history and meaning of Ethiopia. But it's interesting now because the United States is taking more of an active interest in Africa because of the Chinese influence on the continent. So if you've seen over the past year, there's been numerous delegations from the U.S. and we're really looking now to Africa for, investment, development, especially in Ethiopia. We were coming out of, Vietnam in the early 70s. So, the communists get into Ethiopia in 74. So there was, we pretty much, broke all ties, and that's when it all went awry. So
yeah, and I know we're trying to block the Chinese because they're snatching up all the mineral rights. They've got Afghanistan locked down for the cobalt, the lithium, and everything else. Ethiopia's got a lot of natural minerals, but they don't have the infrastructure to get this stuff out of the ground. So like you said, I know the U.S. has been like, hey, this is one country that we're not going to let the Chinese get in and lock up before.
Yeah.
So have you been back since?
No, I haven't. So October was my trip. So I'd love to return.
So what are you going to see? Are you going to go to Church of Mary of Zion in Exum? Are you going to?
That's my dream is to travel up north. At the time we couldn't because of security concerns, but
yeah.
Lalibela, which is a very famous place within Ethiopia that has some very famous rock-hewn churches that are actually carved down into the rock.
Yeah.
So the churches are built down, which was built by one of the emperors who had, I think, had lived in or studied in Jerusalem. I want to say 1400s, around there. So he kind of built Lalibela to mimic Jerusalem. There's Gondar, which is a very infamous place, which was once the capital. But Aksum in the north is St. Mary's of Zion, where
do you think your star is going to get you?
No, not even the emperors were allowed in.
No, at least to talk, because you get to talk with the keeper. He does come out and, like said, if you're there, he will talk to you.
I've seen some interviews.
Yes.
I think Graham Hancock. Who have you ever heard of Graham Hancock?
Why does that name sounds familiar?
He studies ancient mysteries, but he has a famous book called Fingerprints of the Gods.
Yes. We were watching that interview with him.
I do want to know. Doesn't Nick have a tattoo
in Chinese right above his butt?
That's a negative.
That's a
negative.
So
let me check. Unless somebody got me.
Yeah. So but we did see that interview. But I think that star would at least get you talking with the keeper. And now I remember, I don't know if this is true. Are they? I know like that and for people that don't know, the Church of Mary of Zion in Axum, that's where supposedly the Ark of the Covenant is being held. It was in a church next door. They moved it to the new church because the powers of the Ark was actually deteriorating the building. So they moved it. Now, are they moving it? They're moving it again. Am I correct?
Not that I know of. They might be. I heard that there was reconstruction of some of the building it was being renovated, but the outside. But no one is allowed into the Holy of Holies where the Ark is kept. There's only allowed one priest, and he does not leave the premises his whole life.
Right.
And they don't live very long. Like
according to many, that they have issues, and many of them have been known to have cataracts or and to have cancer, and some speculate that it's because of some sort of radioactive happenings going on with the Ark. But that priest appoints another priest upon his passing, and then that person is the only one allowed to keep the Ark.
We watched a couple episodes on it, but I can't even remember what show it was, but the one guy who's like doing commentaries, like, I don't understand why nobody just jumps that little piddly fence that they got around.
And just bust in. But
was like, I'm pretty sure you would die.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
that would be interesting, but it's a heavily armed community.
Right. That's why I'm like, oh my God.
Everybody's got AK-47s, especially because the TPLF also controlled that region. So everybody is heavily armed. But that is there's a a huge reference for the Ark, right? Again, every church has a replica, and this is deep within the culture of Ethiopia that goes back. I'm currently trying to research how far back the history of tablets, tablets. So this culture of every church having a replica, and it goes back, from my reading so far, to before the 4th century, and before before Ethiopia became Christian, of course. So it's really interesting. I mean, you would imagine that, again, the story is that the Ark was smuggled out of Jerusalem by Menelik.
Or was it given to, that's the thing. Was it smuggled? Was it? Yeah.
Well, Solomon was noted. There's a very famous text called the Kebra Nagast, which is the story of how the Ark got to Ethiopia. And the story goes that, it was because it was God's will that Solomon, accepted that Menelik, take the Ark back to the land of his mother and to be protected. But at that time it was snuck out. So nobody, you can imagine that it was kept very much a secret for a while before, maybe there was hushes or rumors of, a certain priesthood having it.
Yeah.
And then from that evolved this culture of every church having, when they converted to Christianity, and, Ethiopia is one of the oldest Christian countries in the world.
What's interesting too is that obviously most, cultures are going to have like sort of keepers of their history and their beliefs, right? And then you throw your own propaganda out there to push people to think one way when it's really over this way type thing. I mean, that's happened forever.
Yes. Some argue that it was also the replicas were made so no one could get the real one. So it would, a bait and switch. And that was also I think what was used when the Italians invaded, also, that, and it's a very difficult land to traverse. One of the most interesting things about Ethiopia that I didn't realize until I was there, I mean, I had read about it, but the weather, because you're in the highlands where the capital is, I mean, we were coming from Kingston, and it was, we're in suits every day, suits and ties. It's 90 degrees, and the humidity is, you can cut it with a knife. And then landing in Ethiopia was so refreshing because it was, it was like maybe the high was 70. And
really?
And at night it was so fresh. It totally changed my whole experience and perception of the country, because at night it was awesome, because I like that. 70s is perfect. It might get up into the 80s in some places, but at night it's so cool and fresh, and you need a long sleeve and a jacket. So it's you're in the highlands, you're in the mountains. I think the eastern part of the country gets to the lowlands, but that's where the kind of the Rift Valley is.
Yeah.
Right. That's where it's sort of like the Rift Valley is almost like tearing apart like a zipper. Whereas like the, in India, the Himalayas, they form as the continents merge. These are like tearing apart, and the western part is going up into the highlands. And that's one of the theories of why you find all of the hominid bone, you find Homo sapiens and hominids.
Yeah.
There is because it was said that the hominid species were pushed to the ground. So if you're in the trees, as hominid, apes, you're strong. You move in packs. It's hard for predators to get to you, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, tough. So if you get pushed to the ground, it's a whole different movement. Your lateral movement, you're not as you're not as strong as you would be in the trees. So that is said to have happened like 6 million years ago, where this separation started. And over 3 million years, you have this highlands and lowlands forming, and hominids pushed to the ground, where they now have to adapt to lateral movement and being bipedal. And then you have another 3 million years of evolution into different, until Homo sapiens, which is interesting. But that's the claim of why all these bones are being found in this particular region.
Yeah, it's definitely a rabbit hole that you go down. It's never ending. We talk about the story of the Ark and how it got to Ethiopia. You're in Nicaragua, which I forgot to tell people. Nick is in Nicaragua right now. He's not at his we would know if you're at your home in Connecticut, because you're always on the couch. It's always the exact same place. But since you're in Nicaragua, I would like to know a Nicaraguan story. Now, I don't know this story, so I'm going to hear it for the first time along with everybody else. I was told by a friend of yours, former colleague, about the time you choked out a horse in Nicaragua. What is this story?
You want to know what's crazy? Is that last week or the week before last, I found my old hard drive, and I found the pictures of the horse. And this story is true. It's not 100% true, because I had a lot of help from my SUV taking out the horse. So it was 06, December of 06. It was at the time it was John Drew's wedding, and the wedding was this extravaganza over like 3 days. And we were in Esteli, and we had a combination kind of wedding party and factory Christmas party at a place about 4 kilometers north of Esteli. And I didn't drink at the time, so there was no drinking involved until later. Until later that night. I was driving. It was like 8 o'clock, and we're heading to the party. And anybody that knows, being here in Nicaragua, there's not lights on the roads. Really, it's not really well lit. And I had a coworker and his wife in the back seat, and we were driving. And there's a huge problem in Nicaragua with high beams. Nobody knows how to turn down. Can we swear on the show?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody turns down their fucking high beams. All right. Yeah. You get fucking high beams in your face. So I was going like 80 kilometers an hour. This guy's coming, high beams in my face. Luckily, I slowed down to about half that speed. And before I could see him, there was a pale white horse in front of the car. And I just hit like the back end, the like halfway in between him and the back, and he went spinning off to the side. And luckily everybody was all right. I checked to make sure everybody's all right. And you could hear the horse just in sheer agony behind us, on the side of the road. And my coworker's wife was an avid animal person, like loved animals. And she was like, "Do you have a gun? This poor horse, like the thing's in agony." And I was like, "No, I don't have my gun on me." She's like, "Is the police gonna be?" I'm like, "No, it's probably gonna take an hour before the police." So I walked back to the horse, and I was like, "Oh man, what were you doing in the middle of the road?" Like, it was just awful. And I made one of the worst decisions of my life. I bent down and I grabbed this horse's jugular and started squeezing as hard as I could. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And it was horrible. And I was just, these things are powerful, even though this wasn't like, a crate, like $100,000 horse, but and I'm just squeezing, and the thing like had a seizure, and it jolted me back up on my feet, and then he was gone. And all this time, the party had gotten word of the crash. So Jesse at the time from Drew Estate, Big Jesse, comes on the scene, and they're actually the pictures I think that he took. But he sees me behind the car, like kneeling down to this horse, and he walks over, and it's pitch dark. You can't really see anything. And he thought I was consoling the horse. So I'm sitting here choking this horse out, and he comes over and he pats my back and he goes, "It's all right, buddy. It's going to be okay." And then walks away.
Oh, geez.
Oh my God! I will message Fabian tomorrow and be like, "Why did you make him tell this story?"
I knew it was Fabian. Unbelievable, Fabian. You fucker.
Because we didn't know the story.
Yeah, I didn't know. Dude, I didn't know the story. He just told me. He goes,
"This is a horrible story, man." I tell Fabian, like, I know. Now it's on record. Jesus.
I know. I thought it was going to be some kind of funny drunken story, Fabian.
Not at all. Listen, well, I ended up getting plastered that night. It was like the first. Yeah, it was horrible.
It's one of those
Fabian
where when you hit an animal, you know, be it a deer or anything, you know, I mean, it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
You know, so you did the right thing, though. You put it out of its misery.
Yeah.
I mean, there was just no way.
I don't even know if I really did anything, but it was horrible. Fabian did that because I always get him to tell him his Star Wars story. He has some crazy Star Wars story about Mark Hamilton.
Okay. So we're gonna write that down next time we talk with Fabian. Like, all right, Fabian, you told him, you know,
ask him about it. Ask him about it.
About this Star Wars.
His story is much not as dark.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, God, I did not expect this story to go here. So
I'm sure Nick was like, I really didn't want to share that.
yeah, I did. Yeah. So
it's not a story I enjoy talking about. All the time.
Yeah.
Fabian, if someone asked me about it,
Well, don't feel bad. I was driving one time and decapitated a goose's head off because I didn't see it. Because I was I'm from New Jersey and I was out like in Hunterdon County where it's like there's no lights either, and I didn't see it. And it was flying. I guess it kind of like got in front of my car and I hit it, and I was like, "Oh my God, what did I hit?" And I got out and I saw its head was off, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Like,
that's terrible,
fucking disgusting. So so don't feel too bad.
That sounds terrible. It's crazy that you asked about it because I literally I hadn't seen these pictures in forever, and I managed to come across them, and it had been a while.
Yeah, crazy coincidence. You know that he'd ask me to ask you that story. So I'll have to mention that to him.
And the car was totaled. Luckily, I had signed the insurance because it was a rental car.
Oh
my God!
It was rough.
So we're an hour and a half in. We should probably talk about some cigars on the cigar show. So I have I am smoking a little upsetter from the little box because
the Ska.
So people always ask me about the upsetters. Ask us because I said it's one of our favorite infused cigars.
I like how you somehow now all of a sudden that is your cigar.
It's not.
It's the first time I think I've
it's been a while. It's been a couple of months since I've smoked one, but it's a question that I get because people always see the acid sign. You know, what other? I've tried the Cuba. I've tried this. What other would you recommend? You know, and I always say, you know, definitely if you haven't had the upsetters, definitely try the upsetters. And then I'll see online people like flavored versus infused. So is it flavored or infused? And then the other question I always get, does it still contain Jamaican tobacco? So
so it's infused. What I wanted to do is make something that was a little bit more balanced with the blend. So it wasn't, it's infused, right? So some people, they're just totally against infused cigars. Others are much more open. And, as people, whether the hardcore guys realize it or not, I mean, infused cigars are some of the most enjoyed cigars in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Right.
But I wanted to make, something that was a little bit less kind of upfront infusion and sweet and a little bit more balanced with the blend. And, as you can see, my love for Jamaican culture started really early on in my career in cigars. And if you see the whole portfolio of Foundation, I really took the approach of being a tobacconist and having worked in a cigar store and being able to offer a portfolio. If you only had Foundation in your humidor, right? Let's say just for that day, all you have is Foundation. As you know, as a tobacconist running a cigar shop, you have all different types of people coming through that door in the course of the day. Some people like strong, they want medium, they want infused, light, and then also price points, right? You got some people that have a certain budget, don't have a budget. So if you look at the whole portfolio from Charter Oak to Highclere Castle, being, the super premium, Charter Oak, your everyday Best Buy, and then everything in between, it was important, I felt, to have an infused cigar. And, I was in Jamaica in 2015 for Bob's 70th birthday. So I spent the whole day at his house. And at the end of the night, everything was being broken down. And I observed a guy pull out a whole leaf of tobacco from his pocket and unfold this leaf. And of course, it struck my attention. And I said, man, where did you get this? Where did it, come from? And I spent the next 10 days searching for tobacco. So if you go west of Kingston, you have an area called May 10, which was the main growing region for tobacco. And that's where the Royal Jamaica factory was. But most of the tobacco is for the industry. The industry kind of faded away at the end of the 90s, but most of it was being grown in that region. And then it turns out that you have tons of people growing in the mountains. So you have a ton of smaller farmers that are growing all different types of crops, and tobacco is still one of those crops. So I highly considered, even before that, at one time, wouldn't it be cool to resurrect the cigar industry within Jamaica? Unfortunately, that would be quite the task because there's not the infrastructure there. So what you lack in Jamaica right now is curing barns, which is, crucial for growing dark air cured tobaccos. So it would be quite the feat, but I managed to, develop some relationship with some farmers. The tobacco is very mild, right? So people ask, well, why'd you do an infused? The level of the quality of tobacco in the Jamaican market is not, because it hasn't been there for so long, is not at the level of Honduras, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Mexico. And it's just a very mild, smooth, and creamy tobacco. So I use some of it in the blend. I knew it would be good for an infused cigar because it was on the milder, it absorbed, flavors really well. And I knew I'd need to blend it with Nicaraguan tobaccos in order to make it work, because it just was not working from a, just a purely filler Jamaican tobacco. It just wasn't there. So, Upsetters, people don't realize, was the name of Lee Scratch Perry, who was one of Bob Marley's early producers, who used to work for a studio called Studio One. And then when he went solo, he developed a song called I Am the Upsetter. Mm-hmm. And it's not really to people think like upset. It's actually, he always claimed is to raise people up.
Yeah.
You know, to have something new, you know, something to raise people up, not as, you know, sort of people being upset.
Like shake people up, get them thinking, get them to be more open. Like,
yes,
that was the message.
And also, it does play on being like the underdog.
Yeah.
You know, like the David and Goliath.
Yeah.
So Upsetters, you know, is loosely based on an old Jamaican cult classic called The Harder They Come. And then kind of all the names, ska, which is named after ska music, you know, Rude Boy, all come from sort of that Jamaican cult classic called The Harder They Come.
I love that.
Yeah.
So with so California, they just, the Supreme Court just failed to overturn the flavored cigar industry thing. Where is infused cigars going with this? Because you got more and more states now in you know, banning flavored cigars, and we know the small flavored cigars they're talking about, ones that are great pina colada, cherry, strawberry, whatever those. But I know some of the infused are being lumped in with that. Is that the case? You know, or is infused being separated from that?
It's unfortunately there's a lot of confusion and interpretation of the law, especially in California. You know, it's hard to get answers sometimes. So, you know, things are made and put on the books, but then there's a lack of clarity.
Yeah.
So, you know, to my knowledge, certain infused cigars are still being sold. You know, I believe acid is still being sold, but other cigars that are characterizing flavors are not. So it's being termed as characterizing flavors. So things that are cherry, chocolate, things that when you smell them and light them up, you're like, oh, that's vanilla. These would be things termed as characterizing flavors, whereas something like Upsetters would be a non-characterizing flavor. So you smell it, you're like, what is that? You know, it's not really, you know, you're not smoking chocolate, you're not smoking strawberry. So a lot of these cigars are being characterized as that, if they're that, right? I mean, that's what I developed Upsetters, was to be a non-characterizing flavor, because I kind of knew some of this stuff was coming down the pipeline. So,
so that's what, you know, clarity. We haven't gotten that yet. You know, what is the definition of premium hand rolled cigars, you know, versus everything else? So you're not seeing that yet anyways.
Well, we're seeing that in California. I mean, they just banned all those. I mean, Massachusetts also has a law on it, but because we're not a characterizing flavor, we're able to sell into these areas. But if you have a coffee cigar, that might be tough.
That is tough, you know, especially one that is just says cafe latte versus, you know, like a,
well,
you know,
there is a couple, obviously.
And there are some that are, you know, like we'll say the tobacco, you know, which doesn't necessarily, it doesn't say coffee, it's just the name, you know. So, but there are some that just say, you know, cappuccino, cafe latte, you know. So it's,
those things would be not permissible to my knowledge.
You know, and one, I'm sure, you know, Johnny Bravo, you know, you probably get this question a ton. The JRE cigar, is it ever going to be available to the public? So obviously not under that name. Because the Aroas would probably have something with the JRE.
Yeah, I forgot all about that, but that's it might help. It might help everybody overall. But no, it's not currently on the market. It's only made for Joe, and you know, it's in Joe's hands. You know, I make them for him. It's crazy. You know, he's given us a lot of shout outs. I'm truly humbled by by it, but unless Joe gives the word, they're just being made for Joe. Unless you see Joe, or sometimes I have some on me,
Okay.
Some people ask me if they see me. I didn't have any of them on me in Florida, but sometimes I have them. But
I don't think some people know what you're even talking about.
Oh, the Joe Rogan podcast, the JRE podcast. Nick makes the cigars for Joe.
I think somebody.
Yeah. So Joe started smoking cigars a lot back in 2020. He does something called Sober October, and he ended up starting to smoke Foundation cigars. He was smoking the Wise Man Maduro for a while.
Keep going. I'm gonna be right back.
Okay.
Sure. And then I ended up making a special cigar just for him called the Joe Rogan Experience. And it's a blend. It's a Connecticut broadleaf blend. When I blended Tabernacle for the first time, there was 7 blends that I was working from. So it's one of the 7 blends that was not the one that I use in the regular Tabernacle production. So he really took to him. And, as a newer smoker, he tends to like, smokier scotches, peatier scotches. He likes spicy barbecue. So normally I wouldn't make something that strong for someone that was just starting to smoke, but I had a feeling he would take to that blend, and sure enough, he did. And I ended up hooking him up with a nice humidor.
Oh, nice.
So
I was watching like something on TikTok, like hit on his show, and like one of the guys that he had on there, and I don't know why I can't remember his name right now, was like basically saying, I don't know if I trust Joe's palate. Like they're like, when Joe like tries like to get into something, he doesn't just like try it, like he's all in. Like
and that
all or nothing.
Yeah, that was Bert Kreischer was kind of like skeptical, but Bert didn't know. His friend Robert Kelly, who's another comedian, kind of set him straight.
I saw that. I saw that TikTok you guys posted about that.
Yeah, that thing went crazy, man. I
told Kevin, I said, listen, it's not like any of us are really like cigar experts, but I was like, you can kind of tell they didn't really understand some of like the cigar like stuff. Like he was like, oh, I didn't trust his palate. What do you mean you brought like, or trust the cigars? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, what could have been wrong with them? Like, where'd you think he got them from?
He had claimed that like 3 years ago he had gotten a cigar from Joe and it was dry. So that's why
there's context. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's why he. Hold on one second. My lamp. Who's that? Who is it? Enoch. What's up, man? How you doing? I'm just on a podcast here. Yeah. You all right? All right. Enoch is one of the artists here for Foundation Cigars, and he's been feeling under the weather, and he left his medicine here.
Oh, you got someone working for you named Enoch too?
Of course, man. Enoch is an ancient man. You good? Jesus. What do you got? The gripe? Jesus. All right, go easy. All right, if you need anything, let me know. All right. Okay, vaya bien. Yeah, Enoch's the man.
Right.
Name. The Book of Enoch. You know about the Book of Enoch?
I know about the Book of Enoch.
Oh,
I wish people knew more about the Book of Enoch, and that's all about the aliens right there. Enoch.
That's a special text, and that goes way back. That's originally an Ethiopian text.
Is it? I didn't know that.
I
know Enoch wasn't Enoch the only person in biblical text not to die? Wasn't Enoch called to heaven?
Yeah, and he ascended to the heavens.
Yeah, he was the only one that didn't die.
Yeah, he was said to be a contemporary of some say Noah.
Yeah.
And pre-flood.
Yeah,
and there's different Enochs in the Bible, but this one particularly. And the text was rediscovered by a British, supposedly, there's different takes on it, by a British explorer called James Bruce in the 1600s, who traveled to Ethiopia and brought the text back. But part of it was discovered also in the Dead Sea Scrolls in, I think it was in Qumran.
Yeah,
and it was written originally, the original text is written in a language called Ge'ez, Ge'ez. Ge'ez is the Latin language to Amharic, which is the current language of Ethiopia. So it's an ancient Sanskrit language that goes back, they say, 4,000, 5,000 BC. And that's where it originally comes from, is Ethiopia.
Oh, I didn't know that, but yeah, people look up the Book of Enoch. Like I said, some crazy stories.
It's ancient.
It is. So, all right. So, the cigar we're going to talk about next is well, first let's watch a little video on the cigar.
All right.
Now I didn't get a chance to get my hands on a box, but I did.
Oh, come on!
I did smoke one, and it was fantastic.
Email me your address.
Yeah. All right. So what is?
I got my special stash. I got a special stash.
Right. So is it pronounced Senator?
Yeah, it's Senator.
Oh, Senator.
Yeah, Senator, which means incense of the gods.
Okay. Oh,
perfect. An ancient Egyptian. Yeah. So it's an actually, we had an Egyptologist from Yale actually work on this project with us to make sure the hieroglyphs on the box were all correct. But that is a replica of one of the boxes found within King Tut's tomb.
Okay.
Yes. So
how long was this project? How long are you working on this? Because obviously it celebrated the 100th anniversary,
which was November 1922. So this past November was the 100th year. This has been for a couple of years. It was actually one. I don't tell these guys this, but one of the main reasons why I worked on the Highclere Castle project, because I was aware of the history at Highclere and the great grandfather working with Howard Carter. And he was one of the main reasons, backers of Howard Carter discovering.
That's what I was going to ask you. Most people don't know, the correlation between Highclere Castle and Howard Carter.
Yes, very intimate relation. So the fifth Earl of Carnarvon, who lived at Highclere in the early 1900s, was an early race car driver, and his doctor told him he needed to spend the winters in drier climates, at which point he started traveling to Cairo and becoming an amateur archaeologist, which I would imagine that would be difficult not to do if you're in Egypt in the early 1900s. Befriends Howard Carter, who Howard Carter was convinced that there was another tomb in the Valley of the Kings, which everybody else had kind of dismissed it at that point. And I believe was part of the excavation for close to 5 years before I think they were on their last month of the dig in November 1922, when one of the workers actually tripped on a step where they were actually housing. There was tents set up where they were actually living, and one of the stones was under the tent, which led into the discovery of one of the most amazing discoveries of our time. Highclere, there's an exact replica of the tomb under the castle, which I had the pleasure of visiting in, I think, 2017 now. And my partner in the project, Adam and Lord Carnarvon, asked if I would do a special box for the 100th year anniversary. Of course, I couldn't deny that request.
No,
So,
not at all. What the box factory say to you?
It was insane, man. My art director Alex and I worked on it very closely. I mean, it was a challenging project. Let me see. I think I have one. Sorry about the noise here. This was actually one of the first replicas, so it's not in good shape. But it was challenging. The box maker actually made the box, and then we had a different artisan actually do the gold foil on the whole box. So it's all gold foiled on the outside. And then again, we had these Egyptologists from Yale who are actually on digs in Egypt. They actually are in more of the less known areas of Egypt looking for like different settlements and whatnot. And they worked on all the hieroglyphs to make sure. There's only one change in the hieroglyphs, which is on the top here, which actually spells out High Claire in ancient hieroglyphs.
Oh, okay.
But the rest of it is true to form. That was actually on the box. So I developed a special blend in a 6 3/4 by 52 Perfecto and a 12 count. We did 700 boxes, and yeah.
So not a cheap cigar. That they retail for about $30 a piece.
33.
So So obviously the box is part of that. Part of that cost. But the one thing that I was reading about, you talk about, on the description, the 7th priming Ecuadorian Habano. Is that normal to have that many primings?
Yeah, in Ecuador it is. You can get up to 9 primings because the plant gets so tall because of the cloud cover in Ecuador.
Okay.
So the cloud is acting as a natural kind of canopy. This is why Connecticut shade has taken so well in Ecuador, whereas Connecticut shade grown in the Connecticut River Valley we would put cheesecloth tents above all of the fields to filter that light and create a microclimate under the tents. Whereas in Ecuador, that's naturally being formed because of the cloud cover. So hence you don't have the sun exposure. So the plant is growing, trying to reach the light. So the plants get much taller in Ecuador. Yeah. It's I don't know if I could let me see if I have. Am I able to share screen or no?
You should be able to. If you should have the thing that says at the bottom "present."
Let's say present.
Where can people find that cigar?
If you Google the cigar, you can still find them. I did look before the show at a couple of sites, and everybody is out. Like nobody, nobody has them. So I'm sure there's
probably they're. Can you see this or no?
Yeah, let me put it up here. So, wow.
So that's Connecticut shade. It's not the Habano, which is the different seed, but that's Connecticut shade seed. But if you can see how many primings there are, and
look at the flowers on top too.
It's one of the rare places that lets the flower bloom on the plant, because what happens is when you let the flower bloom, it ends up reducing the weight of the actual leaf, making it thinner for wrapper grade tobaccos. Okay. So usually you're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 7th priming before you're then topping the flower, and they call that desflorado. I don't know if you ever heard of desflorado wrapper.
I've heard that term before.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm actually desflorando the plant. I'm removing the plant, and then those last primings will be used for the desflorado, which is much darker and thicker because it's a much higher priming.
How tall do they get?
Yeah, that looked like that had been like 9 feet.
Yeah, 9, 10 feet. Yeah. So The Habano Ecuador is very similar in that it gets that tall. So you have different primings, and those higher primings, of course, are thicker and they get a bit darker. But it's not like a super. When you get into the 9th primings, and sometimes the 8th, 9th, it gets super dark.
Yeah.
I like that 7th because it's right in there where it's more of that cafe maduro, like that coffee style, where it's not like super, super dark and it's not light.
Okay. Now, okay. So now I don't want you to have to justify a $33, price tag on a cigar, but is there what can people expect of this cigar? So when they're
what does Steve Saka say?
Yeah,
it came from melons or something like that.
Yeah,
I gotta learn Steve's. Yeah, no, I'll tell you exactly why. I'll answer that question.
Cultivo Tanto is what he took Cultivo that from Tanto? From the melon thing where he picks out. So yeah.
So it was picked out of goat turds and then fermented in. No, I'm kidding. So pricing. So the wrapper, that it takes longer in fermentation. One of the key issues for tobaccos that are much more expensive is time, right?
Yeah.
Tobacco can be fermented much quicker. Tobacco can be fermented slowly. I always compare it to my grandmother's pasta sauce, right? It's the difference between opening up a can, throwing it into a pot, turning on the heat, and you're ready to go. She's at low temperatures, best ingredients, 8 hours a day, low simmer. Why? Because once you start turning the heat up, you start losing a lot of the essential oils to the elements, right? Eventually, if you just kept that pot boiling, you're going to end up losing the whole thing. I mean, it's just going to evaporate down into nothing. The same goes with fermentation, right? That takes time and money, right? This is why a lot of times tobacco can be fermented. You can bring temperatures up to, 130, 140. You can get it done much quicker, but you lose a lot of the flavor and essential oils. So this is one factor. And also with the fillers, right? Fillers, one way of curing and fermenting fillers is to be able to bale cure fillers after fermentation. So they're taken to a certain point during fermentation, and then you're able to age them after that in the bale, which is just a slower fermentation. So this is what you have within this cigar, the box, and then also there's 750 boxes. And it's the 100th year anniversary of King Tut's tomb.
And that's it.
That definitely plays.
One and done.
That's it. Yeah. There's only.
But somebody else said, time is money, and Ronnie even said, you get under fermented cigars. We want the age, we want it to have good quality. So, and also it's a little bit of a luxury. I mean, there are people who spend their money on like coffees every single day that by the end of the week is way more than $33. You know what I mean? So it depends on what you choose to spend your money on as well.
100%. I mean, this is King Tut's 100th year anniversary only comes once every 100 years. And absolutely. There's only 700 boxes, and you're using, the best ingredients on the cigar in the world of black tobaccos, of cigar tobacco. I mean, that's where I've spent my time, right? In this global world of cigar tobaccos, there's different levels of quality that you can use in your blends, and I think that makes a world of difference, right? And then it's also, of course, how you put those ingredients together. But we have Egyptologists that got to get paid.
Have you
doing the hieroglyphics?
Yeah, have you seen the tomb yet? Have you been there?
I have not.
Oh my God, I can't. But Abe went. I don't know if Abe went and saw. They visited a pyramid. I don't know if they went.
No, he went. He went to the Great Pyramid. He was there. He was actually texting me when this was. It was around the same time this was coming out, and I think I had seen a post of his online, and then I was like, "Are you in Egypt right now?" And he started texting me pictures in the Great Pyramid, and then I sent him pictures of this box, and I actually gave him a box at the Great Smoke.
Oh, okay.
That was my gift to him before the show started, because I don't know if he had ever seen or gotten one.
Yeah.
Just from
Abe got a box and you got $1, Kevin.
Yeah. I got we both got. Abe and I both got something from Nick.
No, just remind me. Definitely send me your address, because I have a stash. Right, I think most of them have sold out now. I think you can find some here and there from different shops, but most of them sold out pretty quick. We had to allocate, based on just having 700 boxes for the country, so it was a task. Even at that price point, it was it's something special to have. I'm saving some, so I can smoke one every kind of November on the anniversary of the discovery, and it's one of those special cigars you save for a special occasion.
Oh yeah, and I got to get there. Even if I don't get in to see the tomb, I've got to stand next to a pyramid. I need to understand that size, because a couple of years ago we went to the Statue of Liberty, and I was able to stand underneath there, and then now I can justify the size in my mind because I was there.
I was actually talking to Steve about this last week, and he had gone, I want to say when he was with the Navy, and we were talking about the Colosseum in Rome, which he was not as impressed by based on, what he built up in his mind. When he went to the Great Pyramid, he was like, yeah, it's fucking huge. It's, the footprint is 13 acres.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty astonishing. I hope to go. I mean, I was immersed in, of course, King Tut documentaries and searches, and I found this old one. Sorry. But the King Tut's tomb is really interesting because it's not the normal size of a king's chamber for a tomb. It's rather small. Normally they were much larger, so they think that it was built in haste. And there's also this weird mold that had built up on one of the frescoes in the tomb, which is not found anywhere else, which they think came from the humidity of the paint when it was sealed up. But they've also found, a lot of times the Egyptians would build fake walls and chambers to throw off grave robbers. Yeah. Which King Tut's tomb seal was broken 2 times and then resealed. So nobody ever got to it, which means they had people protecting the Valley of the Kings, and they were caught, and then it was resealed. But there's one wall now with modern technology that they actually think there's potentially another tomb on the other side of the wall.
Was it? Are they thinking? Was it Nefertiti's tomb?
Yeah, which was his mother. Yeah, I think it was his mother.
And then they had found like a tomb, I think, underneath his chamber that was flooded. Like it was
possibly
a ton of water damage.
So it'll be interesting to see if they, because we got the retail, or the details, because they sent the muons through from the from the sun and space, and now we see what this chamber looks like. So hopefully I don't know, we need to get in there. We need to get in there. It's all
you just gotta break apart this fresco that's 2,000 years old. But
I think it's worth it. I'm gonna say it right now.
If Nefertiti's in there, that would be amazing.
That would be. We're gonna move on to the next our final cigar we want to talk about tonight. Let's watch a little video from this cigar. Cigar Snob's #1 cigar of 2022, the Olmec. That cigar, like I said, I haven't seen buzz around a cigar in like a couple of years, and then this cigar just took the industry by storm. I mean, it was nuts at the end of last year.
It's still nuts. Yeah.
It is. So the Olmec.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting how some cigar, it's like lightning in a bottle sometimes.
It really is. Like, everybody is talking about this. Have you seen the giant colossal heads yet?
So I haven't seen the giant colossal heads until I saw one of them back in like 06, 07. So I used to go to San Andreas Tuxtile every year to purchase tobacco. And that's when I originally learned of the Olmecs. I was actually given a book by an older Mexican farmer called The Smoking Gods, which was mainly about the Mayan smoking culture.
Yeah.
I don't know if this book is available, but if anybody finds it, The Smoking Gods, it's this gigantic hardcover book, and it's very detailed. But there was some mention of the Olmecs, and I had seen one, but it wasn't like one of the official like ones that was out in. There's this place called San Lorenzo. And I've just always been captivated by, this culture, which is really mysterious. I mean, there's not a whole lot really known about these colossal heads or the Olmec culture. I want to say late 30s, they started discovering some of these colossal heads, and they were like, these aren't Mayan. These aren't,
Yeah, because unfortunately, they didn't have a lot of written language back then, so it was just passed down.
Yeah, I wonder if some of it was destroyed too by, the Spanish did a number on Central America.
That's an understatement, but yeah.
I'm wondering if some of these guys, because this is the mother culture of Central America as far as we know. So all of which I didn't realize is all the calendars, the pyramids all come from the Olmec civilization. This is what the Mayans, really modeled. Of course, the calendars and the pyramids. They have pyramids in this area of the Olmecs that haven't even been completely uncovered. There's one called the Pyramid of the Sun, and it's still overgrown. I mean, it's not even been excavated.
Yeah, I remember that just a couple of years ago. They're using the LiDAR, flying over the jungle, and they're finding these pyramids.
That was in Tikal, which was in Guatemala.
Okay.
They found 60,000. The LiDAR technology is changing everything. This is what they used in the Amazon to discover. They found pyramids now in the Amazon, which is crazy. But they're discovering so much. And the Olmecs were the first to use tobacco that we know of. I mean, I think it goes back farther. I've actually read recently within the past year that there's actually settlements in Nevada that were discovered that go back to 12,500. And there's been remnants of tobacco found there.
Oh, wow.
But one of the, if not the earliest civilization that used tobacco. And it's all in the same reason of where all of the Mexican San Andreas, which the San Andreas Negro seed, to my knowledge, does predate the Habanesis seed. So from what we know of tobacco, is they're dating it 2.1 million years old from Peru. They actually found the first fossilized tobacco in Peru.
Really?
Yeah. So it's the gentleman that discovered the saber-toothed tiger. He's a Dutch gentleman. I forget his name, but he also discovered fossilized tobacco in Peru, and they dated it to 2.1 million years, which is the beginning of what they call this age, the Pleistocene age, which was this beginning of this ebb and flow of ice ages 2.1 million years ago. but it is said that it's then spread up through Central America into Mexico and then across to Cuba from there. So if you see the maps and you see the maps where they show kind of the ocean floors, you will see in that part of the world near the Yucatan where before the last ice age, that was all land. The land spread out much farther and almost touches Cuba. So there was a whole different trade system going on. I mean, there were so many more islands in these regions. So it makes sense that it would have predated the Cuban seed. Cubans, I'm sure, do not like to hear this, but
yeah, because they say it was the Taino in from Cuba. They were the first, and
yeah. I mean, it goes back a long way. Like we said before. I mean, half the story I don't think has been told, but it's one of my favorite tobaccos. It's one of the oldest seed varieties, and it happens to come from the same region of the Olmecs. So I thought it was perfect to develop a whole cigar around it. I worked with Abdel Fernandez with it, and Mexican tobacco, great example, right, of back to this fermentation conversation. In Mexico, every growing region of tobacco kind of has their own customs. In San Andreas, in Mexico, there's always been this culture of they don't really prime tobacco the same way that it's done in Nicaragua, Dominican, Honduras. It's usually done in 2 primings where they'll just prime the bottom part of the plant and then the top. And then it goes into the barns. They use hardwoods to remove some of the moisture in the leaves in the curing barns. And then typically it would come out and go into 10, 12,000 pound fermentation piles. Why? The larger huge, it's huge. The larger the fermentation pile, though, you can get more of that pressure to get the heats triggered more to get fermentation going much faster, right? So what we do is not do that fermentation in Mexico. The tobacco comes from the barns and then is shipped to Nicaragua, where it then goes through slower, longer fermentation here in Nicaragua to, again, keep those essential oils, keep that flavor, retain the good stuff, which again is crucial in making, premium top end stuff.
Yeah, now that cigar comes in the Mexican San Andreas Maduro and San Andreas Claro.
Yeah.
Now, so I think everybody's familiar with the term Claro, but I don't know. I don't hear often San Andreas Claro being used. Is that not something that's used, or is it just not a term that people?
It's not used as much because everybody's seeking the Maduro, right?
Oh, okay.
It's tough to get Maduro a lot of times. There's not a crazy amount of places that produce really dark Maduro wrapper. So in Mexico, typically, everybody's seeking out the dark stuff.
Oh, okay.
Because we're buying crops, we got the whole cow. So I really love the Claro personally. I tend to gravitate, of course, personally towards darker, heavier cigars, but I like lighter cigars from time to time. I'll smoke, a Charter Oak in the morning with a cup of coffee, or it depends on the moment and where you're at and what you want in that moment. So the Claro was really interesting because not a lot of people use it. And it's a really beautiful leaf, and it has a completely, to me, unique profile compared to the Maduro. So when you're in the curing barns, when they're curing in the curing barns in Mexico, they're using hardwoods to remove moisture from the leaf, right? That's one of the problems. We're trying to get moisture when the leaf comes from the field. You're at 90% moisture content. It's almost like our bodies, 90% water. So we're removing moisture. Those hardwoods produce a real smokiness. Okay, the leaf picks up on that. What happens is in the fermentation of the higher primings, it's in fermentation much longer. And as it goes to fermentation, it starts to lose that smokiness as it's fermented, and it becomes sweeter because you're changing, the starches into sugars, and it's sweeter. Whereas the Claro, I feel, you can get more of that smokiness from the hardwoods from that barn because it's not going as long in that fermentation. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Now is the blend the same on both cigars, or did you have to tweak it a little bit?
It's tweaked to. I rarely will do something where it's just the same.
Yeah.
So there's always slight adjustments made on the filler combinations for the Claro compared to the Maduro, because the Maduros, they're thicker, and they also are able to balance sometimes the filler leaves because they're buffering some of the strength. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you take like Tabernacle and you took the broadleaf off and put a Connecticut shade wrapper, most likely that's going to be very aggressive. Why? Yeah. Because Connecticut shade is so thin.
Yeah.
The vein structure is thin. The cellular walls of the leaf very thin. So you're really going to get hit with a lot of that blend because that blend is mainly Viso and Ligeros, heavier, whereas broadleaf is thicker, it's veinier, and it buffers out a lot of that strength. I'm sorry, my neighbor.
That's okay.
This alarm drives me crazy all day. It's going on.
Ronnie, Maduro is better. Claro is far more unique. I found the Claro definitely more unique, and I like a Maduro. I found the Claro, for me was much. I preferred that one a little bit more. Ronnie did earlier. He's like, he said something about your disdain for cellophane.
And UPC codes.
And UPC codes. Okay. A lot of people don't use UPC codes, Ronnie. But cellophane, I do notice that you have a disdain for cellophane.
I'm coming out with new T-shirts at the summertime. Say no to cello. They should be out for the summer. Listen, I personally, as a cigar smoker, let me explain why. You go through this amazing process, okay? We have seeds that are smaller than a grain of sand. They go through seed beds. They're planted in the earth. They grow from the sunlight and water, and all this care is taken. Months, years. Then it goes into this natural fermentation process. 7,000 pounds. It's controlled compost. It goes through this journey and then into curing rooms and into a wood box. It pains me to have to put a poly cello. I can't. And not only that is, to me, it's a holy experience to be able to open up a box and pull those cigars out and really know they're aging together. It definitely, for me, makes a difference in that process where they're all marrying together and they're not separated again by this poly plastic. Listen, I understand it's not functional in a cigar shop. You got a lot of breakage. You're dealing with people sometimes that are, sticking these things in their noses and they're touching them too much. And I just have trouble doing it on certain projects.
All right, there you go, Ronnie. So there's your answer.
He
so
said it's a condom.
It's shipping.
Yeah.
Charleston Pelican cases drops on the floor. Listen, I get it. I just can't do it. You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful.
Ronnie, just tell that story, Ronnie. So so now people will know why.
Ronnie's the man.
Yeah. Yeah. So all right, so we're gonna get into some questions that I was asked. What's that? What do you
think about it? I'm curious. Like, does it matter to you? Does it?
It does. So I have a dedicated humidor to non-celloed cigars.
Okay.
That I in my big humidor, I have a couple thousand cigars.
Yeah.
I do get on non-celloed cigars some issues sometimes with mold, maybe wanting to start on a non-cello. So I just have a dedicated non-cello humidor, deals with that. I keep it around 60%, so I don't have to deal with any of that. But at the end of the day, I don't know.
Get it up, though. You got to get it up, Kevin. You got to get them up. You got to get them up to you got to get them up in that 70, 72 range.
Good
let me tell you why.
Yeah, 72.
Let me tell you. Wait, where are you living in Florida?
Florida. I'm in
Sarasota. Yeah, you got a lot of humidity going on there. What's your humidity?
We do. I really got to watch that humidity down here.
Okay. Yeah, you're in a different condition, but I'm going to tell you, you got to get it up into that 70 range, 72, because you want to get those oils coming out of that wrapper.
Yeah. So with that being said, I'll try and keep my environment in the humidor to around 60 to 62, because that means the cigars, because I do test mine all the time with my Cigar Medics humidimeter, which I have right here. So the cigars will be 67 in that particular humidor. They'll be 67 to 69%. And then down here we have to deal with the heat. Anything more than that, we start to really see that mold.
But I will tell you, when I started using some tupperdoors, and I put my tupperdoors in the closet, and the uncellowed stuff, I've never had any problems with.
No, I just have to keep an eye.
You got to keep an eye on it. I got one of those Pelican.
Yeah.
I actually personally have worked with my Pelican case, and I put my cigars in there before I smoke them. So I'll go from the humidor, then I put them in the Pelican, hermetic seal them, but you got to be careful too much humidity.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I like to get them in that 72, because I don't like it when the wrappers get too dry.
Yeah.
That's where if the wrapper gets too dry, you kind of put it into a state sometimes where the wrapper doesn't have enough moisture content, and then you lose some of those oils that are coming out. Again, you don't want to get it too high, because you're going to have a problem. Like if you get it way too high, but I tend to have the stuff that I'm ready to smoke more in that 70 kind of range, but I put them in that Pelican.
Yeah, exactly. People reach out all the time, about, how do I keep my cigars humidity? I'm like, you got to remember, I'm on the Gulf Coast of Florida. We're battling heat and humidity 12 months out of the year. So how I keep my cigars, if you're in, I had a buddy of mine, Dan, he just moved from, he lived 5 minutes away from me, moved to Tennessee. He's having a nightmare of trying to figure out, the cigars are cracking. He's having an issue, and then we get people up north, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Vermont, and I'm like, I don't know what to do for you guys.
Part of it too is when you take a cigar and you don't let it acclimate, and you just add like heat to it, it's going to crack.
Yes, definitely. So Connecticut, right? So there's the different regions are very interesting. Connecticut in the north is dangerous when the heat goes on. So once the heat goes on in the houses, Connecticut's normally ranging, even in the wintertime. This is the interesting thing about Connecticut, is you still have high humidity in Connecticut, even when it's freaking cold.
Really?
That's why they say, oh yeah, you have 50%. Hold on a second. Let me. It's raining now, so it's not going to be a good reflection. But even when you got 96% humidity right now. In Connecticut, and you're at 40 degrees, but it's raining there. But usually it can be in the 50 range, 60 range, even when it's 30 degrees out.
Really? Wow.
Because you still there's so much water up there. It's all like melted glaciers and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, but when you put the heat on in your house, you're screwed, because that starts sucking all the moisture content. You'll get readings inside your house of 15% moisture, humidity. 20%, and it could be 50 something outside, because all of those heaters just totally suck out all the humidity. When we released Olmec at the trade show, we're in Vegas. I hate Vegas for releasing cigars. you're at 10% moisture content.
Yeah.
Do you know what happens when you take a cigar, especially a cigar that has a blend of Viso, Ligero, higher priming stuff, right? That's heavier leaf. It's thick. It's stronger. That gets dried out. That totally changes the whole blend, the whole intention of the blend. I mean, if you smoke that at lower moisture content, you're having a whole different experience.
Yeah.
And people think it's kind of not a thing, but it's definitely, it definitely affects your smoking experience. I mean, I told a lot of people, smoke these when you take them home. Let them acclimate. Let them get into that.
I've heard a lot of manufacturers say the same thing. They hate handing cigars out at Vegas, and they'll say the same thing. Please don't smoke these here. You know, they take them home.
They think it's because you don't want them to smoke. You think it's going to be, it's like, no, you're in the worst place. I mean, I would have to smoke in a humidor in order to get, the right smoking experience.
Oh, exactly. Like I said, when I was at Vegas last year, TPE, and just people outside the hotel, like smoking. I'm like, I bet it only takes 5 minutes, being outside here. And like I said, all that humidity is just gone, so yes, it is crazy. Let's see. Let's get to our first viewer question from Steve Saka.
Oh boy.
Why the fuck? And this is I just people ask me, I just repeat, why the fuck does he keep naming cigars that are unpronounceable? I'm assuming that Steve cannot pronounce El Guganese or El Wawense.
Listen, what cigar cannot be pronounced but Guganese?
Yeah,
and it's a great pasta sauce.
Yeah, that's
what is he talking about? What cigar? Senator is a more difficult one.
Yeah,
I wanted to actually name the cigar KV60.
Okay, there you go. That was
which is the name of how the tomb is classified in the Valley of the Kings.
Yeah, but I didn't come back. I'm like, Steve, every podcast you're on, you have to tell people how to say mi querida. So you
come on, mi querida.
Yeah, how are you?
Querida.
Yeah, querida. How are you?
Querida.
Yeah, how are you busting Nick's chops?
Yeah,
on how to.
Come on, Charter Oak, Tabernacle, High Claire, Olmec. Olmec's not that difficult to pronounce.
Yeah, I know. He gets one because he can't pronounce El Wawense.
Well, we are talking about people in this society who don't know how to say Abe.
Yeah. Abe. Yeah.
I wanted to challenge the market phonetically.
Yeah.
Listen, Wawense, I obviously knew people would have a very difficult time. That was my first. You got to remember, though, when I started, nobody knew who I was except for the hardcore guys.
Yeah.
I mean, 2015, nobody knew really much about my experience except for the guys that were really kind of, into cigars and following the experience. So I knew those guys would appreciate or get into the name Wawense. And for me, it was, my artistic, side comes through in wanting to honor, Nicaragua in the proper way. And to put it in English at the time, I would have gotten a lot of shit from the Nicaraguan people, but it was, it's a challenge. It's a challenge with Wawense. It's cool to see how many people know it now.
Yeah, it is. I said versus, I would say even a year ago, like people did not 100%. Know, but now like you hear like just average cigar smokers, they can pronounce it, so which is great. So suck it, Saka. That's one. I think who was on a couple of weeks ago, and they coined the term "Saka bitches." That was
Saka bitches.
Yeah, it was John Carney from LFD, and he went off on one of Saka bitches. So that was it. So the next
that might catch on.
So we're
Saka.
Yes, hashtag Saka bitches. So since we're talking about Saka, we've got you. You guys were partners there at Drew Estate. So I hear on both sides. Saka created the Liga Privada T52, and I tell people no. Nick Melillo created the T52. So who was the person that created the Liga Privada T52?
So let me make this statement very clear. I would have you asked Saka this question?
I have not asked Saka this question.
So I want to make this statement first. People don't realize Steve and I are really good friends. Yes. And all of this has been a plan that we've been working on to trick the whole market to sell more cigars. And everybody's fallen for the bait. Steve, I would make this statement. Liga Privada wouldn't exist without either of us. And also an amazing team at the factory. He came on board end of 2005, beginning of 2006. When I had gotten down here in 2003, I didn't smoke infused cigars.
Yeah,
I was a Padron 3000 smoker. I smoked a lot of Fuentes. I smoked a lot of, at that time, there was a lot of broadleaf Excaliburs, believe it or not, Punch. Boy, I mean, it was a different scene at the time. So I immediately in 2003 started learning how to roll, blend. Like I was 24, I was now in heaven learning from people I've only read about and learned about. So I had been blending for almost 3 years before Steve had come on board. And Steve came on board, and I remember the phone call. Send me something I can effing smoke. Okay. At that time, Oliva Tobacco, not the cigar family, but the tobacco family, was curing Connecticut broadleaf here. And they had been curing broadleaf for a long time. And they had been working with a legend called Frank Ianessa, who made a lot of the Hoya and Punch, broadleaf stuff. He's one of my idols when it comes to broadleaf. So I took all of those blends I had been working on for years and made up 10 blends. And Steve and I would be the ones smoking, and we have very similar flavor profiles and likes, and smoked those blends. And Steve took to one of them very quickly and developed, Liga 9 around it. I had nothing to do with the development of the brand at all. My job was always tobacco side and blending, not, So the T52 was actually a trip that we made to Connecticut, and it was me, Steve, and John at the time happened to be all on this trip. And one of the farmer's sons we walked into a barn, and there was this strange leaf that didn't look like broadleaf, and it was Havana seed curing for the barn. So we ended up purchasing it. We ended up committing to like 10,000 pounds of it.
Oh, wow.
First year fermentation, not burning. Second year fermentation, not burning. We thought we were screwed. We thought we had, it just was not turning. And it didn't turn until the third year. And then that leaf was used around the original Liga Privada blend.
Okay. So all right. So just to throw it out there, it was all Nick. Just throw it out there. So talking about the Liga 9. So at the Great Smoke, someone wanted me to ask you about the Liga 9s that were supposedly fermented in a Pappy Van Winkle barrel.
Oh, God.
Were those? Was that true? And what happened to those cigars?
Oh, God. Okay. So there had been a trip down in Nicaragua for Cigar Safari with, it was a Tennessee and Kentucky trip. and one of the sales reps was down here, and one of the clients ended up sending the sales rep, who's a good friend of mine, a gift basket. Within that gift basket was a bottle of 20, I think it was 20, 23, I forgot. This has got to be like 2009, 2010 of Pappy Van Winkle. I'd never heard of it, never seen the bottle. Of course, I was instantly attracted to it because of this gentleman on the bottle smoking a Presidente, and the rep gave it to me, and I said, "Oh man, this bottle is awesome. Pappy Van Winkle. This name is so cool." And then I would, when I go to the States from time to time, I would find old Rip Van Winkle for like $30, and I found another bottle of the 20-year for like $100. So I'm in Nicaragua one afternoon. I was like, Pappy Van Winkle. Let me look them up on the internet. Oh, there's a phone number. Let me call him up. I cold call Pappy Van Winkle. I talked to this guy for like a half an hour. Sir, I didn't catch your name. Who do I have the privilege of speaking of? My name, Julian Van Winkle. Oh, Mr. Van Winkle, it's a pleasure to talk with you. Thanksgiving was coming up. I said, I'm going to send you some cigars for Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoy them. I sent him L40s. I sent him a box of T52s. I sent him an ashtray. A couple weeks after Thanksgiving, I get a phone call. Nicholas, the cigars were a big hit at Thanksgiving. My whole family loved them. What can I do for you? Tell me anything, and I'll do anything for you. I said, Mr. Van Winkle, I would love to cure tobacco in some of your 20-year-old barrels. You got it. I got you. I get a call about 10 minutes later. We had, it was 2 20-year barrels and 2 Buffalo Trace barrels that were prepped by Julian Van Winkle, and I had them shipped to Nicaragua.
Oh, man.
And I shipped them and had them hidden in the back of the factory, and was curing Liga Privada fillers in these barrels, of which I made a very small amount of Liga Privada double Coronas, and some Toros. There's one video online of like one of the BOTL, I think, groups, and it's actually me, Steve, and John were on this trip, and they didn't really even know about them, and I was showing them in the video. It's somewhere online. I've seen it.
Oh man!
And I'm showing them where I have it hidden in the back. And so from there, I ended up leaving, and the rest is history. They ended up developing the Pappy Van Winkle cigar and everything. I don't know what they ended up using, or what they ended up doing, but I don't know if those barrels are still
So
sure they're not.
So I'll have to ask Sam. Sam Morales came in after you guys, after you and Steve.
Yeah,
Sammy would know what happened to those barrels.
Well, no, I can actually ask the. My one of my friends is still the GM.
Oh, okay.
Factory, so yeah, I'll ask him.
It's in somebody's office as like a desk or something.
It was in the back, where our loading dock was, and where I know they moved. The factory has been totally added onto and changed. So it would be crazy if they still had them back there.
Oh, that's awesome.
that would be crazy. So next question is from me. You obviously know John Foster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So John Foster was telling me a story.
He actually just texted me. He's here in Nicaragua.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Oh, I've been trying to get him to come down here forever.
Oh, so what's John doing down there? Just visiting?
I think he's visiting some customers and whatnot. Yeah.
Okay, so John told me about a story once where he woke up like in the middle of the night. It's like 2:00 in the morning, and you're out in the middle of the tobacco field, just touching the tobacco, just looking, just being, and it's a great story, talking about your dedication to tobacco. Is that something that you do? Is that story true, or that you just
listen? Sometimes we'll go out. Yeah. I mean, sometimes we can go out. It depends, especially if tobacco. You got to understand, when tobacco is in the growing process and in the curing barns, there's a lot of responsibility, man. You know what I mean? You have something very fragile. People don't understand it. They see me pictures in the fields or in fermentation piles, and they're like, "Oh, that's the coolest job." You have no idea how much stress is involved.
Well, yeah, because
this whole process.
Because you have pictures, you're stretching the leaves. Then we got the videos of the guys, the Palones, they're beating the shit out of tobacco. And then we hear you say, "Oh, it's so fragile." Well, these guys have piles and they're beating it against you.
Well, no, I mean, it could be, especially the heavier stuff, but fragile in the sense that the wrong conditions.
Oh, okay.
In the curing barns, that process is, especially when it comes out of the field. Sorry, there's somebody announcing I think it's a funeral. This is how people kind of learn about funerals and stuff like that. Sorry. So, in the curing barns, when it's coming out of the fields, if you can mess things up really easily, really quickly, if you're not on top of the whole process. I mean, this is going to be crazy.
So is the tobacco telling, is the tobacco telling you something? Like
always
at like night when you're in there, not during the day.
Good thing it's not like terrorizing me all the time. No, I mean, you have to be able to observe and listen. I mean, this is the best tobacco, people, right? Because if you're coming in with preconceived conditions, or just because it's in your mind, or you have a narrative and you're not being observing and you're not listening to the conditions, that's when things can go awry. So you have to be very attentive. Luckily right now, I'm not in the position where I have all of that responsibility on me because of the partners I'm working with. But before, all of Drew Estate production, quality control, fermentation, that all went through my hands. Any quality control issues, tobacco and fermentation. I remember, early on with, T52, if you have a bad sort, say you have a bad sort where you're taking thicker leaves and they're not sorted properly, and you don't have all the thick leaves together with the thin leaves. If you got thick and thin leaves mixed together and then they go through fermentation, what's going to happen? The thinner leaves are going to cure faster than the thick leaves.
Yeah.
Okay. Now they're all together. So say you're reviewing leaf and you're like, "Oh, this is done. It's burning." But they're all mixed together. Then those get passed to the production floor. You're going to have some cigars burning and the other ones are going to be all fucked up. They're not going to have the right. That's a simple thing, but that's a huge thing. Proper selection and sorting of tobacco. Huge. If you're not dialed in with that, that can happen pretty easy. If your people are not on the same page, you know what I mean? Like that can happen pretty easy. If you have people in the curing barn that don't know what they're doing, you got temperatures set too high, you got temperatures set too low. And that's happening at night. That doesn't stop, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you go check the barns at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go check.
So,
you know what I mean?
That's it. So my final question before we let you go for tonight. What did your time spent at Drew Estate with Saka? And even you're obviously you guys are still friends. You still talk. What's one lesson about tobacco or even about life that Saka has taught you that you still take away that every day? Like what is a Saka-ism?
Listen, so from just a work perspective, working with Steve, I really enjoyed because of his attention to detail and organization. So, running a factory, things can go awry really fast. So being able to have the proper communication is crucial. So working with him, getting emails responded to on a timely basis, having clarity in communication. I mean, that's crucial to an organization, and especially, a production, or is clarity. And that's one thing, if anybody knows Steve, that you get is clarity. And that, yeah. and when it comes to making handmade cigars, I mean, that's crucial. And then also, his commitment to quality, and not lowering that standard, or, that bar. I definitely, learned working with Steve, or also committed to that. Which was, again, also refreshing. That's why the combination of both of us working together, I think, produced some of the most amazing cigars that this industry ever produced. That's a big statement, but I think the cigars we were doing together at that time with the team down here was making some of the best cigars that the industry has ever seen. That's a big statement, but that's the reality.
It's true. What you guys were doing, together, and what you guys have done separately, hands down, some of the best, and I would say the most consistent cigars in the industry, is Foundation and Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust.
Because we're both lunatics, and we understand that from the perspective of being cigar smokers, right? I am at the end of the day, I'm a cigar smoker, so I know more than I think anyone, because in the sense of I smoke cigars, and not saying I know more than anybody, but in that sense, I am the customer. I was there, so I think I have an intimate relationship with the market in that sense, which a lot of times some people don't have the luxury of having. And, some people are down here, or maybe sometimes people are come from Cuba. They haven't been exposed to the market. I was lucky. I got to start working a cigar shop, is understanding, the market and what was going on in the US market. If you don't have that experience, it's tough sometimes to understand, also flavor profiles and blends, right? US probably has different flavor profiles than, say, the European market or other places on the earth. So I've been lucky to have perspective, and then to be able to come down here and, learn from some of the best in the world. I was able to pick up, a lot of different elements from different people. I'm sorry, I'm going off on tangents.
No, that's okay. And I would say you definitely know more than Steve Saka does, because you have a Candela and he refuses to work with it. So that, in my book, tells me you are a better cigar blender than Steve Saka.
I don't know about that. I mean, Candela's rough, man. Candela's tough to work with, but I do it, for the upsetters, but then also I do one called the Grasshopper. Yeah.
So you have one, Steve doesn't. That's 1 for Nick Melillo, 0 for Saka. So I'm just throwing that out there. So
I don't know, but he worked with melons or something like that.
Yeah. Cultivo Tanto is what he calls it. Got that from the Japanese square watermelons or whatever. I forget what the story.
Japanese do it right.
I do have to say, Quentin, right?
Kevin is that okay? So I have never talked this less on a show before, and this is the single longest running show that we've ever had.
Crazy.
At 2:45.
Oh, we're on 2:45. Holy cow!
Well, we were 90 minutes in before we got to cigars. So
that's true.
We had to make up some time somewhere. So Nick, thank you so much. It's God, I always love chatting with you.
Same here. This has been fun, man. I've enjoyed this very much.
I've had a blast. So if you see
got
John,
good questions.
Yes, thank you very much. And if you see John Foster, if you get to meet up with him, tell him I said hi.
I'm supposed to see this nut soon. John and I met actually in Nicaragua. It goes back to the story I was telling there about the Olivas working with Broadleaf. They were working with John. And that was 2003, 2004. And I happened to be walking through this gigantic warehouse of tobacco. I can't remember why. I was alone. And then out of the blue comes this other gringo, and he's alone. And we meet in the middle of this warehouse. And I go, "Hey, man, what's going on? What are you doing? Where are you from?" She's like, "Connecticut." I was like, "What? I'm from Connecticut." And that was our first meeting.
Wow, just weird. So, and I'm definitely going to reach out to Fabian and give him a lashing for making.
But you need to have him tell that story about what's his name from Star Wars. It's a crazy story. If you're a Star Wars fan, it might disturb you a little.
Okay.
It's a great story, though.
I'm going to reach out, even if we just do like a 15-minute interview with him. I'm going to get him Fabian on, and we're going to
do it. Because that's the only way he made me tell the horse story is I made him tell his Star Wars story because I loved it so much.
Oh, right on. So thank you so much, man.
All right, guys. Yeah, thanks to you guys and to all the viewers, and I hope we can do this again. Definitely send me your address.
Oh, definitely will do, man.
But
all right, man.
Definitely do that.
You have a good night down there.
All right, guys. All right.
See
ya. Be safe. All right, peace.
Peace. All right, everybody start typing in the word cigar. And then in the meantime, we'll hear a word from our sponsor, Corona Cigar. All right, what an absolutely fantastic show. I can't believe it's been almost 3 hours. I love chatting with Nick. I love every time I see him anywhere, we always talk. And then it's usually like this show. It's never about cigars. It's always just, history, culture. So thank you, Nick, for coming on. And you better believe we're getting that story from Fabian. I'm reaching out to him tomorrow, and then we're gonna get him to.
We have to have him do. If he's not on the show, we have to have him actually do a video.
Yeah. We're gonna do a video interview, and then we'll just have to post that. So let's share my screen, and it's time for the. Let's get that the tapping ash and taking names giveaway presented by Amendola Family Cigars. Let me see if I can share the screen here. Why is it not coming up? Okay, there we go. So, all right, let's start collecting comments. 27. Let me just get my list of people that cannot win just to make sure that they're not on there. So, no, NLED JNES. So definitely shoot me an email, Kevin at cigarprop.com. The winner tonight gets a hat from our fine partners at Illusione Cigars. And the March 2023 Corona Premium Cigar of the Month Club shipment includes a Drew Estate FSG, a La Aurora, El Septimo Alexander III, Bandolero, and a Corona Cigar Constantine. A crazy amount of great cigars. Let's see. Next week we welcome. This is where Kerr comes in handy. We've got the founder of Charlotte Cigar Week. They'll be coming from the show. For the life of me, I did not write down his name, so I don't remember the gentleman's name from Charlotte Cigar Week. So we'll be talking with him all about that event coming up. I'll be going up for a couple of days, joining Kerr up there. Make sure you're following Cigar Prop, producer Jessica, Kerr Viajante of Stogie Road Cigars, Nick Melillo, Foundation Cigars. All the links are in the social media, or all the social media links are in the video description below. Podcast description if you're listening to this in the future. Also, make sure.
I just want to say that that's my birthday when you're going to be gone.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, you had a great birthday last year, so I hooked you up with the Edgar Allan Poe thing, so I'm going to miss this one.
Okay.
So remember in the video description below, the Boston Jimmy climbing Mount Fuji for Autism Speak. That's in the description. Also, Matt and Nicole from Smokin Tobacco hosting their third annual raffle for the Cigar Family Charitable Foundation. If you want to get in on that and get some great raffle prizes, check out that as well. Thank you, JC Newman Cigars, Cigar Medics, Amendola Cigars, We Are the Muscle, Jake Wyatt Cigars, Illusione Cigars, Deep in Flavor, Deep in Your Mind, K by Karen Berger Cigars, Corona Cigar, and of course, Drew Estate and Experience Acid.